Something has happened to you these last few days that no earthly explanation can fully contain. You felt a movement, a vibration that did not come from outside, but from a deep place, a place that had been kept in silence for years. You have been carrying a question that no one around you can answer, a weight that you learned to carry alone, because you realized that the words of others could not reach the scale of what you experience. But tonight, what lies dormant within you is not just a feeling, it is a tool. It is a spiritual weapon that was forged in the fire of your own isolation, and it has just been activated. You are not here by chance, and the restlessness you feel is not a problem to be solved. It is a call being answered. For the time we spend together, I will reveal what is happening with your vision and why the things that once seemed important have now lost their shine. You will understand why your exhaustion is not a sign of weakness, but the cost of carrying something the world was not designed to understand. And before this moment ends, I will declare over you the authority that has always been available, but which you needed to cross this specific desert in order to access. Stay here, because what I am about to give you is the map you have been searching for everywhere, except within yourself. You have noticed waves of a tiredness that does not go away with sleep, an exhaustion that seems to come from the soul. It is a fatigue that has no physical origin, but rather stems from a constant calibration between who you need to be for the world and what your spirit demands of you. You feel more alone than ever, not for lack of people, but because of a selective loneliness, an irrepressible urge to withdraw from everything that does not vibrate on the same frequency as the truth you have begun to see. You have realized you can read people's intentions before they even open their mouths. When someone lies, when someone pretends, when someone brings an opaque energy, you feel it like a sudden change in the air around you. This is not a curse, it is your spiritual weapon's radar being calibrated. If up to this point you have felt your chest expand, if there was an immediate recognition that someone has finally described what you keep in secret, pause for a moment. Take a deep breath and feel the weight of this revelation. The act of typing these 3 numbers is your way of saying yes to the activation that is happening right now. It is your signature on a contract you had already signed, but only now have had the courage to claim. Type 888, and, after your commitment is recorded, come right back to me. Do not rush. Let the vibration of what you have just declared settle. This recognition is the foundation upon which we will build everything else. So many times you tried to fit your essence into systems, groups, and expectations that were designed for people who do not carry the burden you carry. You tried to speak languages that were not your own, trying to be understood by ears that did not yet have the sensitivity to hear your frequency. This caused a paralysis, a feeling that you were trying to walk with your feet bound by invisible ropes. The pain you felt was not your failure. It was evidence that you were outside your place of sovereignty, trying to serve a table that was never set for someone of your nature. Each time you tried to explain yourself and found only emptiness or misunderstanding, something within you closed off. But what you did not realize is that this closing off was not to isolate you. It was to protect you. Your interior became a locked temple, a sacred chamber where your spiritual weapon could be forged without the interference of outside energies. Now, this time of locking the doors is coming to an end. The authority you possess is not something you should seek in books or in external masters. It is an inheritance in your spiritual DNA. It is the capacity to discern the real from the false, the ability to feel the presence of the invisible in a world that only believes in what it can touch. You are, by definition, someone who carries a light that others can see, but which few have the courage to access. What you are feeling now is the beginning of the removal of the layers of doubt you accumulated during years of trying to adapt. You were not made to adapt. You are made to act as a sentinel, as someone who sustains the frequency while the rest of the world is still searching for answers you have already found in the silence of your own journey. It is not about what you do, it is about what you hold within yourself when no one is looking. It is about the firmness of your presence amid chaos that to others seems uncontrollable, but which for you begins to reveal itself as a movement you already knew how to navigate. This paralysis you experienced was not a wrong turn, nor a sign of weakness. It was the inevitable result of trying to pour your sacred content into containers that were not molded to withstand your density. You strained to fit into professional systems, family dynamics, and social structures that operate under the logic of scarcity and competition, while your own structure operates under the logic of abundance and sovereignty. You felt paralyzed because each time you tried to lower your frequency to be accepted, you created an internal dissonance that drained your vitality. It was not a lack of effort. It was the nature of your soul resisting confinement. You are like the seed of an ancient tree trying to grow in a tiny ceramic pot. The pressure you felt was not a sign that you should not grow. It was the warning that the pot was about to break. You tried to speak languages that did not belong to you, trying to translate your vision for ears that had not yet developed the hearing for what you carry. This attempt at constant translation is what exhausts your spirit. You are exhausted not by the work you do, but by the continuous effort to justify your existence to those who do not have the capacity to recognize your origin. The truth is, you were not created to adapt. You were created to be the reference point for others. When you try to fit in, you deactivate your spiritual weapon because your strength lies in your uniqueness, not in your conformity. The paralysis will cease the very moment you stop asking for permission to be who you are. It is a shift in posture. It is a transition from one who seeks approval to one who assumes the place of authority. Imagine now your own heart as a temple that has remained locked for ages. For a long time, the doors were kept shut, not out of fear, but from an instinctive wisdom that recognized that what was stored inside could not be exposed to just any environment. You protected this sacred space, keeping your essence in a vault, while on the outside you presented a facade the world could digest. This temple is the place where your spiritual weapon resides. It is where your intuition, your capacity to see beyond the veil, and your unshakable strength have been held in reserve. Now the locks are being removed, not by an external force, but because the time of your mission demands that the interior and the exterior become one. The temple is not being opened so the world can come in and mess it up, but so that the authority residing within it can emanate and organize the chaos around you. Your divine authority does not need authorization from men. It does not depend on titles, positions, or public recognition. It is the stillness you maintain when everyone around you is in panic. It is the clear vision you possess when everyone else is confused. It is the weapon you carry, which does not cause destruction, but which brings order, clarity, and truth wherever you go. The reopening of this temple means you no longer need to hide your light so as not to blind people. The light you carry is, in fact, what they need most, even if their initial reaction is discomfort. If something within you, right at this moment, recognizes this truth as if a heavy door had just been opened in your chest, if you feel that your identity is not something you need to build, but something you simply need to allow to manifest, type the 4 terms, I am awake. Let that declaration act as a final seal upon the clarity that has just been established. By typing those words, you are committing to no longer hide, to no longer lock yourself away, and to no longer shrink to fit into places that cannot hold your magnitude. Your response is the testimony that your spiritual weapon has, at last, been activated for its original purpose. Feel the weight of your words. Feel how the simple act of typing this affirmation alters the posture of your spine and the temperature of your breath. Do not do it out of obligation. Do it as a recognition of who you have finally accepted to be. Do not see it as a button or a metric for the world to see, but as a sacred gesture of agreement between your soul and the truth that has been named here. It is a silent seal, a way of saying that between you and this moment of clarity, there has been a union that needs no explanation. This agreement is what keeps us connected. It is what ensures the message arrives where it needs to arrive, without noise and without distractions. Your agreement is the fuel for this frequency to continue to be sustained for all who, like you, are going through this process of transition. It is a way of saying you heard, you understood, and you are ready for what comes next. Maintain this stillness as you make this movement, feeling the solidity that comes from being in agreement with your own truth. There is no hurry, only the certainty that order is being restored at every level of your consciousness, beginning with the deepest, where your spiritual weapon now shines, finally unimpeded and ready for your action. You are moving from a state of defensiveness to a state of sovereignty. From now on, your presence will do the work you once tried to accomplish with effort and exhaustion. The solution to the state of exhaustion you have lived does not lie in one more strategy, nor in a new effort, nor in a frantic search for external tools. The spiritual weapon that was activated within you is not something you build, for it was already there, waiting only for the authorization of your recognition. You spent years trying to forge this strength through discipline, will, and resistance, but true internal sovereignty happens exactly at the moment you stop fighting and begin to allow the frequency you carry to occupy the space that rightfully belongs to it. It is a return to the home you should never have left, a return to the center of your being where your authority does not depend on human approval, on positions held, or on visible results. You are not an apprentice trying to master a gift. You are a guardian who has finally remembered what you were guarding. When you accept that your spiritual weapon is inherent to your essence, the need to prove your worth disappears, and in its place arises an unshakable stillness that moves through any situation. It is as if, suddenly, you were in the eye of a hurricane where order remains, regardless of the external chaos. This state of internal sovereignty is what makes your presence by itself begin to organize the environment around you. You no longer need to convince, you no longer need to explain, and you no longer need to justify yourself before those who do not have the capacity to see what you carry. Simply by being who you were created to be, your light acts as a filter, pushing away what is incompatible and attracting what is necessary for your purpose. The acceptance of this role is the most courageous act you can practice today, for it requires the death of your need to be understood by those who still live in the pattern of survival. Take a deep breath now, allowing this understanding to settle into the deepest layers of your being, where doubt used to reside. There is, at this very moment, someone who came to your mind while I spoke about this transition of state. Perhaps it is that soul who is visibly weary, someone who has been carrying heavy burdens without ever complaining, someone who has kept a silent watch over others while their own life seems stagnant. This person has a sensitivity that no one around them understands, and because of that, they have felt increasingly isolated, believing that their own essence is a weight to be carried alone. Their face appeared before your eyes for a reason, and it was not a coincidence. Send this message to them. Do not do it as advice nor as a suggestion from someone who wants to teach, but as a delivery of something that was entrusted to you. The person you remembered needs to hear that their exhaustion is not a sign of weakness, but a sign that their spiritual weapon is ready to be activated, and that, just as happened with you, they also no longer need to fight against the flow. Before we proceed to the closing of this experience, I want you to reinforce what has been awakened. Type the 4 terms. I am the chosen one. Do not do it as a request for validation, but as a signature, a seal you place upon your own story, declaring that the time of doubt is over. By writing these words, you are assuming the position that was assigned to you from the beginning, accepting the responsibility of carrying what was given to you and the authority that comes with that recognition. Feel the solidity of this affirmation in every letter your fingers form. Feel how your spirit straightens, how clarity expands, and how your vision becomes sharper. This is your moment to occupy your place, not out of arrogance, but out of obedience to what you are in your purest essence. You felt something move when I mentioned exhaustion, didn't you? It is not the tiredness of the body which rests with sleep, but the deep fatigue of the soul that for a long time tried to translate the world through codes that were never its own. You have observed for years people around you operating with an ease that for you always seemed like a foreign language. You tried, you forced, you adapted the tone of your voice and the speed of your step, believing the problem lay in a faulty gear within your own interior. But what you carry, this spiritual weapon that now begins to awaken, was not made for everyday use. It does not serve to compete in earthly markets, nor to win battles of ego. It is a technology of divine authority that remained on standby while you went through the trials necessary to forge your resistance. The loneliness you experienced, this almost physical need to withdraw from superficial noise, is not an isolation by choice, but a protection by design. When you withdraw, you calibrate. The noise must stop so you can hear the frequency of your own weapon being activated. And if you have noticed that lately, the intentions of people around you reach you before they even open their mouths, understand that this is not a coincidence. It is your spiritual radar coming out of a state of inertia. You are not imagining things. You are finally seeing the structure behind the appearance. If this recognition is real for you, if you felt the weight on your shoulders lessen upon understanding that this isolation was not abandonment, but preparation, then pause now for a second. Breathe deeply, just these 3 digits written in words as a seal of recognition of your activation. Type 888 and then return, because what lies beneath this activation is what truly defines your journey from here on. What happens now, after this first step of recognition, is the diagnosis of the paralysis you have lived. Why, even knowing what should be done, did movement seem blocked because you tried to fit a precision part into an obsolete gear. You have been trying to serve short-term purposes with a tool that was designed for eternity. Your exhaustion, which I mentioned earlier, came from trying to spin a system that was not aligned with your frequency. It was like trying to carry an ocean in a leaky bucket. You felt the frustration of energy loss, but what was actually happening was the discarding of the useless. Everything that does not serve your spiritual weapon is being removed, not as punishment, but as a reorganization of your territory. Imagine for a moment your heart, not just as an organ, but as a temple that has remained locked for decades. The windows were covered so the dust of the world would not enter, and the doors were sealed by fear and the duty of conformity. You lived for years in the half-light, protecting what you kept inside, believing the external light could corrupt your interior. But the time of locking up has passed. The activation you feel now is the sound of the key turning in the lock. It is not an invader entering, it is your own authority emerging. It is your true self, the one forged in silence and solitude, finally occupying the space that belongs to it. If this image of the temple, of the lock being opened and the light beginning to circulate again, makes sense for the moment you are passing through, if you feel that the doors are finally being flung wide open to your truth, write now the words, "I am awake." Just these 3 words. Write "I'm awake" and come right back, because what remains now is only the final adjustment. If what we are building here touches what is most true in you, let your like be just a wordless amen. It is not an invitation for metrics, it is a silent agreement between what has been revealed and what you accept as your reality. The Amen you do not need to speak, but which your fingers confirm, is the alignment that allows the flow of energy to continue without interruption. We are reaching the part where the solution presents itself, and it demands no further effort on your part. You do not need to build. You do not need to climb. You do not need to prove anything. The weapon is already there. It has always been there, buried under layers of family expectations, inherited beliefs, and the constant attempt to be what others expected you to be. The solution is surrender to what you already are. It is to stop fighting the current and understand that the river is not trying to drown you, but to carry you to where your weapon will be needed. You no longer need to convince anyone that your path is legitimate. Legitimacy does not come from external approval, but from the efficacy of your own frequency. When you stop explaining and start being, your presence begins to carry a silent authority that needs no words. Your life, from now on, is the exercise of being who you were designed to be, without asking for permission. And it is precisely at this turning point where your internal sovereignty begins to dictate the rules of your journey, that you realize your clarity is not selfishness, but a service. You realize that others are still lost in the fog, trying to force doors that should already be open. And that is why, at this moment, someone specific appeared in your mind. Perhaps it is that friend who always seems to be running but never gets anywhere, or that family member who lives in a state of constant exhaustion, as if carrying the whole world on their shoulders without permission to put the burden down. This person you see now, with that posture of someone who feels invisible but keeps trying, can no longer live without this revelation. Send what we are experiencing here to them, not as someone recommending something new, but as someone delivering a message they were already waiting to receive on their own. Before this encounter concludes, it is necessary that you take possession of what has been unlocked here. It is not a hope you cultivate for the future, but a reality you inhabit from this very second. Do not do this as a request for validation, but as a signature on a contract your spirit has already reviewed and approved. The alignment we are living in these minutes is not a coincidence. It is the conclusion of a preparation cycle that lasted years, and by writing these words, you imprint your will upon your destiny. Let your fingers confirm what your silence has already accepted. Feel now, in the quiet of this moment, the weight of the responsibility you have finally embraced. You were not called to be like others, but to carry the light that dissipates what others cannot even see. You are the bearer of a frequency that restores balance in environments that seemed hopelessly chaotic. You are committed. You are commissioned. You are sent. At this instant, in every corner of the world, others like you are being awakened by the same frequency. What we are experiencing is not an isolated event. It is a network of consciousness that is connecting across distances, forming an invisible wall of purpose and sovereignty. You are not alone in your sensitivity, nor in your calling. You are part of a lineage that has always existed, but that now, finally, has found the clarity to rise.